Part 2. The Unraveling. 2,000 words. Economic collapse accelerates. Alien worlds in crisis technology. Failures cascade through council space. Desperate attempts to negotiate with Earth. Humanity's hidden preparations revealed. The Council's final. Desperate gambit new dawn for independent humanity. Part 1. The breaking point. The crystalline spires of the Galactic Assembly stretched toward artificial stars, each tower representing a different species that had earned their place among the governing elite. Commander Marcus Reeves stood at the entrance to the central chamber, his weathered hands clasped behind his back as he watched the other delegates file past. 25 years he had served as Earth's military liaison to the Council. 25 years of watching humanity bend under increasingly restrictive regulations. The Zelanti delegate glided past him, its translucent body pulsing with bioluminescent patterns that conveyed superiority. The creature didn't acknowledge Marcus, though they had worked together for over a decade. Behind it came the Corvin representatives, their mechanical suits hissing with each calculated step. They viewed humans as chaotic variables in their perfect equations of galactic order. Marcus entered the chamber and took his position beside Ambassador Chen Wei, Earth's chief diplomat. She gave him the slightest nod, her face revealing nothing of the storm that was about to break. They had received their instructions from Earth Command just hours ago. What happened in the next few minutes would change the course of galactic history. Prime Coordinator Vexnar called the session to order, its forearms spreading wide from its serpentine body. The Cytherian had led the Council for 3 centuries, and its voice carried the weight of that authority. "We gather today to address the human question once and for all," it announced, its words translated instantly into 1,000 languages. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. The human question. As if 8 billion people could be reduced to a simple problem requiring a solution. "The Council has deliberated extensively," Vexnar continued, "and we have reached a unanimous decision. Humanity's aggressive tendencies and unpredictable emotional responses pose a continued threat to galactic stability. Therefore, we mandate that all humans must undergo genetic restructuring within 1 solar rotation." The chamber erupted in approving harmonics from the assembled species. The Zelanti flashed patterns of agreement. The Corvins calculated probability matrices that showed improved outcomes. The ethereal wisps hummed their satisfaction at this logical solution. Ambassador Chen stood slowly, her movement drawing every photoreceptor, eye, and sensory organ in the vast chamber. "The Council speaks of genetic restructuring as if discussing a software update," she said, her voice carrying clearly despite its soft tone. "You would remove human emotion, creativity, and passion. You would make us into biological machines, predictable and controllable." "It is for the greater good," Vexnar responded, its tail coiling in what Marcus recognized as dismissive certainty. "Humanity has been given every opportunity to conform to galactic standards of behavior. This is not punishment, but evolution." Chen turned to face the entire assembly, her dark eyes sweeping across the tiered seats. "Then you leave us no choice. By the authority vested in me by the United Earth Government and its colonial territories, I hereby announce humanity's immediate and complete withdrawal from the Galactic Council." The silence that followed was absolute. For several heartbeats, not a single being in the chamber moved. The concept was so unprecedented, so impossible, that even the advanced minds present couldn't immediately process it. Then chaos erupted. The Corvin delegates' suits sparked with computational overload as they tried to calculate the implications. The Zelanti flashed rapid, discordant colors of alarm. The wisp's harmonious humming became a discordant shriek. Species that hadn't shown emotion in millennia displayed panic in whatever way their biology allowed. "You cannot withdraw." Vexnar's voice cracked with something Marcus had never heard from a Cytherian: fear. "The Council Charter has no provision for withdrawal. Member species are bound by sacred oath." Chen pulled out a data pad and set it on the podium. "We've reviewed the Charter extensively. There is no clause preventing voluntary withdrawal. You never imagined anyone would want to leave." She paused, letting that sink in. "Your oversight is our opportunity." The Corvin Prime unit stepped forward, its mechanical voice grinding out words. Economic sanctions will destroy your colonies. Trade routes will be closed. Technology exchanges will cease. We understand the consequences, Marcus said, speaking for the first time. We've been preparing for this possibility for 5 years. Every human in Council space has received evacuation orders. Our ships are already departing your stations and ports. As if to emphasize his words, alerts began flooding the chambers. Communication systems. Human workers were abandoning their posts across the galaxy. Engineers, doctors, researchers, pilots, all walking away simultaneously in a coordinated exodus that must have taken years to plan. The Zelanti High Speaker's bioluminescence flickered erratically. Our medical stations depend on human surgeons. Their intuitive understanding of biological trauma is irreplaceable. The mining operations in the Kepler sector, a Vorthon delegate chittered anxiously. Human engineers designed those extraction systems. Without their maintenance, the quantum communication relays, another voice called out. Human scientists created the encryption protocols. If they shut them down, Chen raised her hand for silence. We will maintain critical life support and medical systems for a transition period of 30 standard days. This is not done out of legal obligation but human compassion. After that, you're on your own. Vexnar's 4 arms trembled with rage. You condemn billions to suffering, supply chains will collapse, worlds will starve. No, Chen replied firmly. You condemned yourselves when you decided that control was more important than cooperation. When you chose fear over friendship. We offered you our creativity, our passion, our unpredictable problem-solving abilities. You saw only chaos to be contained. Marcus watched as more alerts flooded in. The human-designed navigation systems used by 60% of galactic shipping were going offline. The agricultural consultants who had helped feed 40 worlds were boarding evacuation ships. The entertainment networks that had brought human, music, art, and stories to 100 species were going dark. Please. The word came from an unexpected source. Elder Thimal of the ancient predecessors, who rarely spoke in council sessions, rose from its seat. Reconsider this action. We can negotiate. The genetic modification mandate can be delayed, perhaps modified. Chen shook her head. For 2 centuries, you've told us we were too violent while using human soldiers to fight your wars. You said, we were too emotional while consuming our art and music. You claimed we were too unpredictable while relying on our innovation to solve problems your logical minds couldn't crack. No more. The chamber's lighting flickered, a sign that even the EER station systems were beginning to feel the absence of human technicians. Several delegates looked around nervously. Marcus stepped forward to stand beside Chen. Humanity chooses freedom over security, chaos over control, and independence over integration. We wish you well, but we will no longer be your convenient solution to difficult problems while simultaneously being treated as a problem ourselves. The human delegation turned and walked toward the exit, their footsteps echoing in the vast chamber. Behind them, the panic intensified. Emergency committees were forming. Military leaders were calculating whether they could force humanity to return. Economic advisors were running catastrophic projections. As they reached the doorway, Vexnar's voice boomed out one last time. You will regret this decision. The galaxy will turn against you. You will be alone among the stars. Chen paused at the threshold and looked back. We've always been alone among you. The difference is now we're honest about it. The doors sealed behind them with a definitive hiss. In the chamber, the full weight of what had just happened began to settle on the assembled species. Communication networks were already showing strain. Trade routes were being recalculated and found wanting. Military fleets were discovering that their human-maintained systems were locked out. Within hours, the first economic collapses began. The Zelanti medical stations reported critical failures in operating rooms designed by human engineers. The Corvin manufacturing hubs ground to a halt as human-programmed automation systems shut down. The artistic districts of a dozen worlds fell silent as human musicians, writers, and performers departed. But perhaps most terrifying of all was the realization spreading through the council species. They had never truly understood how deeply, humanity had integrated into their civilization. Like a cardiovascular system they'd taken for granted, humans had become essential to the galaxy's function. And now that heart had chosen to stop beating for them. The unraveling. 3 months after humanity's withdrawal, the Galactic Council's emergency session convened in a chamber that showed clear signs of decay. The lighting flickered intermittently, half the translation systems were offline, and the air recycling systems wheezed like dying stars. Director Kezes Theta of the Morvac Consortium stood at the central podium, his 6 eyes scanning data that grew more catastrophic by the hour. "The economic cascade has exceeded our worst projections," he announced, his voice carrying none of the usual Morvac confidence. 43 major trade routes have collapsed completely. The Zelanti homeworld is experiencing its first famine in 8 millennia. The Corvin computational networks are operating at 12% capacity. Around him, the council members looked diminished. The once proud assembly of species that governed known space now resembled survivors of a catastrophe they couldn't comprehend. The wisps had lost their harmonious glow, their forms flickering like candles in wind. The Vorthan delegates huddled together, their hive mind fragmented by the loss of human-designed communication boosters. Supreme Admiral Gorth of the warrior caste stood, his battle armor scarred and poorly maintained. "My fleets are grounded. The human engineers took their knowledge with them. We can't even perform basic maintenance on our drives. Our weapon systems are failing one by one. It's worse than mechanical failure," whispered Scholar Mayan of the Ethereal Collective. "The research stations have made no new discoveries since the humans left. We've realized that we weren't collaborating with them. We were depending on them to think in ways we couldn't." Vexnar, still Prime Coordinator but now looking centuries older, coiled tighter on the command platform. "We must establish contact with Earth, offer them whatever they demand." "We've tried," Kezetheta responded. "They don't answer our communications. Their borders are closed. Our scout ships report massive construction projects throughout human space. New stations, new ships, technologies we don't recognize." The truth was becoming undeniable. While the council species had spent generations becoming specialized and interdependent, humans had remained adaptable generalists. They could fill any role, solve any problem, adapt to any situation. The council had seen this as dangerous unpredictability. Now they understood it had been humanity's greatest strength. Meanwhile, in the Sol system, President Diana Martinez stood in the newly constructed Strategic Command Center orbiting Mars. The massive screens showed a galaxy in flux, council space, contracting, independent systems emerging, and human colonies thriving in their newfound freedom. General Harrison Blake, Earth's military commander, approached with a report. "The council sent another delegation to our border. They're offering full autonomy, no restrictions, even a permanent seat on the governing board." Martinez didn't turn from the screens. Too little, too late. They still think this is a negotiation. They don't understand that we've already moved beyond them. "The interesting part," Blake continued, "is the number of individual species reaching out separately. The Thymol, the younger Zelanti, even some Corvin units. They want direct relationships with humanity, outside council authority." This had been unexpected but not unwelcome. The withdrawal had revealed cracks in the council's supposedly united front. Species that had been suppressed or marginalized for centuries saw humanity's rebellion as inspiration. Dr. James Wright, head of the Science Directorate, entered the command center with barely contained excitement. "Madam President, you need to see this. Without council restrictions, our research teams have made more breakthroughs in 3 months than in the previous 30 years. He activated a holographic display showing new technologies. Drives that could traverse distances the council deemed impossible, medical treatments that worked across species barriers, terraforming techniques that could transform dead worlds in decades rather than centuries. "We were never the problem," Wright said quietly. "We were the solution they were too afraid to accept." Back in council space, the situation deteriorated daily. The Vorthan hives were separating, no longer able to maintain their collective consciousness without human-designed amplifiers. The Zelantes' bioluminescent communication was breaking down into incomprehensible static. The Corvins were experiencing something they hadn't faced in eons: uncertainty. Ambassador Chen Wei, now serving as Director of Interspecies Relations for Independent Humanity, received a private message from Elder Thimal. The ancient being had requested a secret meeting on a neutral station at the edge of both territories. Chen found Thimal alone in an observation deck, looking out at the stars. The predecessor had taken a great risk coming here. "You knew this would happen," Chen said. "It wasn't a question." "My species is old," Thimal replied, its voice like stellar wind. "We've seen empires rise and fall. When the Council began restricting humanity, I recognized the pattern. Fear of change leads to suppression. Suppression leads to rebellion. Rebellion leads to transformation. Then why didn't you speak against it? Would they have listened? The Council believed they were protecting stability. They couldn't see they were creating the very chaos they feared." Thimal turned to face her. "Some among us understand now. The galaxy needs humanity's chaos, your unpredictability. Order without change is death." Chen studied the ancient being. "What are you proposing?" "Not a return to what was. That's impossible now. But perhaps a new beginning. Some species are ready to work with humanity as equals, not rulers or subjects. The Council is dying, but something new could be born from its ashes." The meeting with Thimal was the first of many. As the Council's authority crumbled, individual species began reaching out to humanity. Not with demands or ultimatums, but with genuine requests for partnership. The young Zelanti who embraced change, the Corvin units that had developed beyond pure logic, the Vorthon hives that sought new forms of consciousness, all found in humanity not a threat but a catalyst for evolution. The great irony was that humanity's withdrawal had achieved what centuries of Council membership never could. By refusing to be controlled, they had become indispensable. By choosing isolation, they had become the center of a new galactic order. In the Council chambers, Vexnar stood before the remaining delegates. Their numbers had dwindled as species abandoned the dying institution. "Perhaps," the Prime Coordinator said slowly, "our greatest error was not recognizing that chaos and order are not opposites but partners in the dance of existence." The chamber's lights finally failed completely, plunging the great hall into darkness. When emergency power restored minimal illumination, half the remaining delegates had gone, leaving to seek their own paths among the stars. President Martinez received the final report from their intelligence services. The Galactic Council had officially dissolved. Several new alliances were forming, many actively seeking partnership with humanity. Earth and its colonies stood at the center of a transformed galaxy, not as rulers, but as the vital, unpredictable heart that kept civilization evolving. "We broke their galaxy," General Blake observed. "No," Martinez replied, watching new trade routes form on the strategic displays, seeing former Council species working directly with human colonies. "We freed it." They had built a cage of order and logic, forgetting that life itself is beautifully chaotic. We simply reminded them. The cosmos had indeed spiraled into panic when humanity withdrew. But from that chaos, something unprecedented emerged. A galaxy where diversity wasn't feared but celebrated, where unpredictability wasn't suppressed but harnessed, where humanity's greatest weakness in the Council's eyes had become the foundation of a new interstellar age. The stars continued their eternal dance, indifferent to the drama below. But for the first time in millennia, that dance included new steps, wild and unpredictable, taught by a species that had refused to march in formation. Humanity had abandoned the Galactic Council, and in doing so had saved the galaxy from itself.